Right. So to get the recording, many of you probably already know because you've already taken a class with us. But if this is your first class with us for the summer, you're going to the class website, the school website, and you will look under summer recording. So I'm putting that information in the chat right now. Right? iLoveLessons.com and then under summer recordings to get the recording. All right. So moving on, our topic on the syllabus is what you see on the screen. So you probably would already have noted that, right? Section A, individual, family, and society. When you are doing the exam, the first couple questions will be on this topic, right? Most people find this to be a relatively easy topic because they can relate it and you already have a lot of general knowledge about it stored away, right? All right, so please note the topic as a heading for today's notes and class. Yes, you will need to take notes, whether it's in pen or pencil, it's up to you, right? But if you're planning on studying the subject in a serious way, yes, you need to take notes. All right, so I'm going to go on to the second slide now. All right, so what we are really looking at is types of family. And as we do the types of family, we want to discuss what are the factors leading to each type, right? And that part we will write in. Now, my notes are organized family by family, slide by slide. Sometimes when I teach it, well, when I would teach it in person, we would do it using a table. So in school, if you've done the topic already, you might use a table. Right? Okay, great. Some people have put in types of families in the chat already. So nuclear families, extended families, sibling households. Anybody have any other type they know that they want to mention in the chat before we start? Adoptive, single, right? Joint, right? Foster, blended. So foster or blended or reconstructed are kind of the same thing. Right. Okay, good. So let's go. All right. Now, today we will probably only have time for families, and we will not get through the next part of the topic, unions. So if you all have done the topic before, you will be familiar with unions, but we will get to that probably next week, right? If we have time today, we can start it. Anyway, let's look at the first family type on the list. So the first one I have is nuclear family. Sorry, one second. Okay, so this is the nuclear family here, right? Make sure we spell it correctly. Sometimes people like to put in an extra U after the C, but it's really nuclear, N-U-C-L-E-A-R, right? And this is made up of parents and children only, right? Now, the children could be by blood or they could be adopted. So let's make sure we remember this, right? So they could be by blood, so biological children, or adopted, right? I suppose your foster children might fit into this role as well, right? But it's not just biological children. If parents have adopted children, whether they've adopted relatives, children of relatives, or whether they've adopted through a government ministry or organizational system, the idea is that these two generations are in the same household, the parents and the children, right? Now, on your right-hand side, this is not a type of family, right? Monogamy. This is a related to, right? Now, it could be a type of relationship, which we will get to when we do unions next week, right? But so when you'll see the family type on one side of the slide, and the other side, you might see a related to. So one related term in nuclear families is monogamy, No, it's a relevant term in other types of families too, but I just put it here because we have a list of definitions we need to know, right? And so this is the practice of either marrying or being in a relationship with one person at a time, right? There are some of you might be thinking, well, what's the other option? Well, some people have, but not in committed relationships, so they may be seeing multiple people. There is the possibility of a husband marrying more than one wife, or of a wife marrying more than one husband, right? And those terms we will meet next week. Yeah, you should know the related term, right? If you want to put it in a separate place on a separate page, you can do that too. Okay, so I'm giving us a minute to make a note of the definition. And then we're moving on. In the meantime, if you have a chat or comment, you could put it in the chat, right? A comment or question, sorry, you put it in the chat, right? All right, sorry about that, guys. I changed slides accidentally. All right, so today we are dealing, let me just repeat, the main topic today is types of families, right? Next week we'll deal with, those of you who've already done the topic, you know there's something else, types of unions, which deals with the types of adult relationships, right? So we will deal with unions next week. Today we are dealing with families, right? So that means they will involve children or wards or charges, whatever you want to call them, right? All right, so a reminder that if you have a question or a comment, you need to put it in the chat, right? I will not be unmuting, just in case we have any trolls in the session. We will be answering questions throughout the different weeks, right? So to help us revise what we're doing. All right, so I'm ready to change the slide. I think most people are done by now, right? So I'm just going to clear the markings and change the slide, right? All right, so I'm going now to the next one, which you would already have seen. So if you didn't get it, I'm going to give 1 more minute this time, right? Because someone is asking. But moving forward, I can't give as much time, right? So you'll need to either come back to the recording or else take a screenshot, right? And finish the note afterwards, right? Now, even if you have done this topic in school already, as a couple of people have said, please make a note of what is on the screen anyway, or at least keep the link to the recording for later on when you're revising. Sometimes we get additional information every time we do the topic. Sometimes new things stick that we didn't keep before in our heads and so on, right? So there's still value in coming back to it. Okay, next slide now, right? All right, so the next one that we're doing is extended family. Okay, so let's talk about this. So the extended family, right? very popular in the Caribbean. So I won't be able to see the chat just for a few minutes while we discuss some things and I put some notes here, right? Come on, pencil, what are you doing? Right. Okay, so extended family, sorry, popular in the Caribbean, right? Most families probably in the Caribbean, more often than not, are extended families. And this means that, I'm not sure if the bottom of the side is cut off, sorry, just now. Right. It means that it's a family that includes grandparents and other relatives. So by a family that includes, by a family, we mean that parents and children, right? Now it has to have grandparents. It has to have different generations. Right? So it must have the parents and then the grandparents, or the children, the parents, the grandparents, right? So by family, so we mean parents and children, or parents and children, right? And other relatives, it could have maybe aunts, uncles, but it must have the grandparents, for it must have that different generation for it to be extended. If it's just aunts and uncles, then it's something else. It's a sibling. So you must have grandparents for it to be extended, right? All right, now over here we have some other related terms. I'll check the chat in a minute. So you should be noting these as we go, right? And if you need the extra information, write that into. So related terms, we have kinship. So family members are kin. They are kin to each other. They share kinship bonds, right? So your sister or your brother is your kin. Your parents are your kin. Your aunts and uncles are your kin, right? So family equals kin, right? And that means you're related by blood, or you're related by adoption, or you're related by somebody's marriage, right? Now, the next thing is fictive kin, because you know in Trinidad, we like to call everybody auntie and uncle, or sometimes moms, or sometimes, well, that's really all I know, tanty, yeah, all right. So fictive kin, so you have somebody who is not related to you by blood or by adoption or by marriage, like your neighbor, let's say, but you grew up with the person. You go there all the time, you eat by them, they help you with homework, they let you play in the yard, they let you pick the mango, whatever it is. But the person is not related to you by blood or adoption or marriage, right? But they have an important emotional relationship with you or with the family. And you see them as a relative. So they are fictive kin, right? So these are all the aunties and uncles that are not related by blood. Right? Not related by blood. Now, if you understand this, you probably don't need to write the extra. Now I'm saying by blood, but understand as also by marriage or by adoption, right? If a parent gets, let's say, remarried, then whomever they get remarried to, that person's brothers and sisters, their brothers and sisters, they become aunts and uncles. They are not fictive kin. They are not fictive aunts and uncles. They are actually aunts and uncles. They are kin because of the marriage, right? All right, so I'm going to check the chat now. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. Yes, you're right in both sides, but just be clear that the left-hand side is the type of the family, right? And the right-hand side is just some other terms that might come up. Terms that are important, terms that are on CSEC's list, but I'm trying to put them in a way rather than give you a list of definitions that has no context to relate them to the type of family. All right, now I want to ask a question at this point to the class. why do people form extended families? What are the factors that lead to an extended family being formed? So I'm going to mute myself and let you all respond in the chat. What are the causes of an extended family? Why do people choose to form extended families? Okay, great. So there are advantages. People, right? Okay, so convenience, financial issues, the expense of purchasing a house, right? If there's a tragedy and a house gets destroyed, or if a family member dies and you need the extra support, financial, emotional, or otherwise, right? To share responsibilities. Okay, good. Care for people's well-being, keep your family close, carry on family legacy, tradition. Okay, all of these are very good reasons, right? All right, so I'm gonna put a few of these into on the side here, right? And you should try and note, so we're taking notes, right? We should try and note at least 3 of these, right? Or 4. So causes. So one cause is money, right? So the need for support, the need for financial support. Right? From additional members, right? So you might move in with a grandparent, and the grandparent might be retired, they might not be working, but they might have a pension, or they might have, well, yeah, pension, government or otherwise, and that could help support, or they may have a house, so you could live rent-free, right? So that's another way that they could provide financial support. Okay, so second thing, somebody said tradition. So maybe that is what the family has done for generations, right? A third thing, care and support. Right? So maybe we need to provide childcare. So you move in with grandparents so that the grandparents could help with the baby while the parents at work, or the grandparents could pick up the children from school while the parents at work, or it could be elder care. You have elderly relatives who maybe cannot move around like they used to be able to. They cannot make food for themselves. They need help with bathing, changing, taking medication. And you have them move into the house so that it's easier for that to happen, right? And I will put as the last one after a tragedy, right? I mean, and this is kind of related to the above, right? So to help cope with the loss, to ease the financial burden, to ease the pain of whatever. So I'm just going to put to ease burdens as the explanation, right? And it could be financial burden. So I'm putting money, a $sign as shorthand. And then it could be emotional. Right, the word is falling off the page there, but it's emotional, right? All right, so let's try and note, even if you don't note it the exact way that I have it. If you change the words, that's fine. But let's make sure at least that we have the main point, right? So a question could ask you, they could describe the family structure, they could describe a family. And then they will say, okay, identify the family structure. So you will say extended family, right? And then they will say, what could have been 2 factors that led to the creation of this family structure? And then you could say, well, perhaps the parents needed additional financial support, so they had the grandparents move in with them, or they moved in to live with the grandparents or the parents, their parents, because if it's the adults, then it's their parents, right? Or perhaps they needed to provide care for the elderly relatives, and so they had the elderly relatives moving with them. Or perhaps, unfortunately, a spouse passed away, and with that, an income was lost. So to help ease financial burdens, they decided to form an extended family, right? All right, so I'm just muting myself. I'm going to look at the questions in the chat, as well as you could take 2 or 3 minutes. I will check in 2 minutes to see if you need more time to finish with the notes, right? All right, so I'm just repeating the 4th one. The 4th one I said was after a tragedy, but you could word it differently. And I put as the explanation to ease burdens, right? And they could be financial burdens, or they could be emotional burdens. So someone had put as an example in the chat that, like, let's say a house burns down or so, somebody loses where they live. They may move in with the extended family so that they will have a place to live, not have to pay rent, and replace all the things that were lost, the appliances and so on, right? So in that way, you'd be easing a financial burden, or if the tragedy is like the loss of a spouse, you move in to provide the person with comfort so they wouldn't be alone. So let's say a grandparent passes away, you provide emotional support by moving in. If a parent passes away, you provide financial and emotional support as well through moving in. Yes, an extended family could have only one grandparent, like a grandfather or a grandmother, right? The idea is that it must, for it to be extended, it has to have more than 1 generation, or more than 2 generations, more than the nuclear family generations, right? So it must have children, parents, and grandparents. Maybe possibly children, parents, and like a grand aunt or something. If it's not grandmother and grandfather, let me say it's their sibling. It can, okay, so I have a question in the chat. Can an extended family have no grandparents? So if it is like a grand aunt or great aunt, we would call them great aunt or great uncle. So think of your grandparents and think of your grandparents' siblings. So if your grandparents' siblings were living with you, then it might still be an extended family and not the grandparents, right? Grandparents, siblings, though. So your great aunt, your great uncle, if they're living with you, it must have those different generations. Because there's a family type that we call when the parents and the children in the house, and then the siblings of the parents and their children are in the house, right? And some of you all know it. Some of you all have already said it in the chat, sibling, and we will come to it in a little bit. So not sibling, sorry, joint. Sibling is something else. So joint household. So we'll come to that in a little bit. You must have the grand level of the generations for it to be extended. Okay, now in colloquially, you know, when we're just speaking and to each other, we might refer to the family as an extended family if the auntie is living there and the uncle is living there, and it gets the idea across. But according to the textbook and according to the syllabus, then you must have the grandparents, right? Or that generation. If you're in an extended family and your grandparents die, will it still be an extended family? No, if it goes to just the parents and the children, then it's nuclear again, right? Is it an extended family if your grandparents are in a different country? No, we are thinking about the family in the context of who is living in the house under one roof, right? In this exercise that we're doing for CSEC. All right, guys, can I clear away the markings now, and can we go to the next family type? All right, so we're going to the next family type, right? And you will see some of you asking about different configurations and whether or not it's extended, but you will see in a bit what the other types are, and then it will clear up the question. So rather than me answering everything in the chat individually, let me let's keep going, right? All right, so here again is our next type, joint sibling family, right? Or sometimes you might see joint household, right? So the question could say joint household, right? Now this family is somewhat ambiguous in the picture, not the family type in words, right? But in the picture, it gets used again for two other definitions, right? But anyhow, a joint sibling family or a joint household, you see the word joint is very important in this definition, right? Is a family in which adult siblings and their spouses and children share the home, right? So like if you look at the picture, you can see these two look like adults and they have children they are holding, right? And then let's say she is his sister, and so this is the man she married, and then these are the children and they all share a house. And let's say this is her brother and his wife passed away, and so he's the one with the child, and they all share a house because it's a huge house. I don't know, it has it's a mansion, it's a skyscraper. Look it over here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4 levels, 5 levels if you count the bottom thing, right? So you have adult siblings and they share a house. The parents left the house to all the children, right? And you know, land is so costly and it's so hard to build, and sometimes you need the extra support of family. So the adults live together with whoever they married and their children, and that is a joint household, right? So note that the caregivers, the parents, are of the same generation. It's brothers and sisters and their spouses and any children they had. So it's not quite as small as a nuclear family because it's not just parents and children from one, right? Like Fuller House. Okay, that's a great question. Or Full House before it, if the adults in the house were siblings and then they had their children and they moved them in. So I've only seen, I used to watch Full House, but the three of them were they siblings, the three men? And then Fuller House, I think I've only seen the first season, so I can't remember exactly. Can both adult siblings raise a younger sibling? That is a different type of household, right? So for this one, we're looking at married siblings and their spouses and their children. So it's like the parents left the house to the brother and the sister, or all the sisters, or all the brothers, or whatever. And rather than build another house, everybody just, because the house is so big, they just move in everybody. The sibling household, I think, is different, right? So this type of family, you have to have joint in the description. So you could say joint sibling family or joint household. because you're joining two heads of, usually parents, the heads of the family, you're joining two of them together. And we do not have grandparents in this setup, right? So it is not extended. It's different from extended. Okay, so no grandparents, right? And some of you will say, well, miss, if our grandmother or grandfather moved in, what would it be then? Well, hopefully CSAC would not be so silly as to ask that question, because the definitions they have given don't account for that. But if you have the two sets of siblings and families and you have grandparents, perhaps I might go with extended rather than sibling or joint family household or joint household, right? So you must have the word joint in this description. Right, so okay, so if you have siblings, one is married to a spouse and they have children, and they have, one of them has a brother or sister, adult brother or sister living there, but that person doesn't have children, isn't married yet, I think we would still call it joint. Right, all right, now on the right side I have a definition for sibling. Right, so oops, sorry, change the slide, let me go back. Right, yeah, so the definition for sibling, right? So this is your brother or sister in basic terms, right? But the strict definition is children who have one or more parents in common, and the parents could be biological parents, or they could be parents who are adopted them, so adoptive parents. Notice we would say adoptive parents and not adopted parents. The children are adopted children, but the parents are adoptive. Or what's the other one? Parents by marriage. Right? All of that would make you a sibling. So if you are a child and you have one or more parents in common with another child due to biological relationships, or the fact that you were adopted, or the fact that your parents got married, then you are siblings. And well, you all will be familiar with the term step sibling, which is on the next slide rather, right? So I'll discuss that then. All right, so now what might be the factors, sorry, that lead to the creation of a joint household? Okay, good. So if you think about the cost, right? So let's do that on the side here, right? Because again, since I could ask you, factors, what are the causes of this family type? So factors leading to this household, or if you prefer to put causes, you could put causes, right? All right, so one is the high costs, or the high cost of housing, right? And so there you could explain land costs a lot, building costs a lot, rent costs a lot, right? Next thing could be inheritance, a shared inheritance. So again, if the parents leave something to all the children and then they all share it, right? A third thing could be death of a relative, or let's say to get increased support. All right, so increased emotional support, but it could also be financial, it could be economic support, right? So we could say after death of a spouse, right? Loss of home, and so now you need increased emotional, well, and financial support, but we already said the high cost of housing as number one, right? All right, so all of these could be reasons. Another reason could be the need to share childcare, right? So to share the burden of childcare, or the effort of childcare, right? So if you have more adults in the house, or if you have the two households together, then maybe one person could watch the children while more people work. All right, so I'm going to check the chat now to see what we're saying. So go ahead, complete your notes, and then we move on in 2 minutes, right? Yeah, financial instability, cost of land. Yes, if the parents passed away and then everybody remains living in the same house together. Yeah. By number 2 is shared inheritance. So the idea that the parents leave the house to all the siblings, or the compound to all the siblings, or the apartment complex to all the siblings, whatever they left. All right, so number 1 is the high cost of housing. Number 2 was the shared inheritance. Siblings and cousins who also have siblings living together. Yes, I suppose that would be joint household too. The idea if a joint household is siblings and same generation, so no grandparents, right? Do all the siblings have to have children? The definition envisions everybody having children, or the siblings having children, but I suppose it is possible that one might not, and it would be a joint sibling family or a joint household. Right? Joint is what is important, right? And also, let me just clarify that you see this joint household. So if you have a highlighter or a pen, you could just highlight it. Joint household is what you are more likely to see, right, for CXC. So you might see it in the multiple choice. You might quicker see it when your teachers are giving you notes in school. This is what you will see, right? All right, so to just clarify again, the thing that separates the joint household from the extended family that we looked at before is whether or not there are grandparents. Right? So if there are no grandparents, but it's adults and children, it's joint household, the siblings and children, siblings and their families, right? All right, so I want to move to the next slide. So I'm going to the 10. If you need to screenshot it, and then we're going, right? We want to take a little break, a short break at about 12:30. Okay, so let's try the next slide, right? Okay, question about half siblings. Half siblings are still siblings. They do not, it's about the generation level, right? Whether if it's a half sibling instead of a full-blooded sibling, nothing really changes. All right. Okay, so we're looking at blended families now, right? So on the left hand, I forgot to change something on my slide. Let me go back and do that while we are here. Right, this should be blended family, right? Okay, so we're looking at blended family, and then some of you had a slightly different name for it. You want to put it back in the chat? Some of you call it reconstructed family, right? Okay, so our blended family or reconstructed family. Oops, sorry, wrong color ink there. Right, so reconstructed family / blended family, right? So this is a family consisting of a couple as well as their children that they have together, if they have any, as well as their children from previous relationships, right? Which may have been marriages or it may have been unions. So maybe the people decided not to get married and they had children, and now these people are in a relationship and they also have children, or they bring their children from the previous marriage into the family, right? So this is our blended family. And on the right hand side, actually, here is another type of family. I think I was running out of time, so I put another one, right? So this is a type. And then also here is the other type. I'm not sure how this ended up over here, but it did, right? This is also a type. So this is not a related term on the right hand side here, sibling household. So sibling household is when siblings live by themselves and older ones care for younger ones. Or I mean, it's possible they could all be the same age and they care for each other. A reminder, I cannot respond, I cannot unmute you, right? So you have to, if you have a question or a comment, put it in the chat, okay? All right, so let's just go over that. So we have two types on this page, right? So one type is a reconstructed family or the blended family. And so this is a family, you have a couple and they have children together, as well as they've brought into the family any children they may have from the previous marriage, right? They may not have children together. If it's just them and the children from a previous marriage, it's still a blended family, right? And then we have sibling household. So siblings who live by themselves, the parents are not there for various reasons, which we could talk about just now. And a lot of times it's the older ones caring for the younger ones, and then that is also a type of family, right? So to be clear, there are two types of families on this slide. Is reorganized family another term for blended family? Yes. Do the children have to be from a previous marriage? They could be from a previous relationship and not marriage. Reconstructed, reconstituted is another word. So, okay, so other words you might see besides blended, you could see reconstituted. You might see reorganized. It could be that one parent has children from a previous relationship, or it could be that both parents have children from a previous relationship. Yeah, if they were not married in the first relationship, it's still a blended family in this new setting. Can a sibling household just be two siblings? Yes. So my mom used to visit a sibling household when I was a child, but I didn't know it by that name. Where it was these two adult twin sisters who shared the house that they would have inherited from their family, their parents, and neither one had gotten married, and they were twins and still dressed alike, even though they were like old in their 50s, 60s, 70s, right? They still had matching clothes. Right, but that was a sibling household. So it was just the two of them. They were more or less the same age. Um, no children, you know. All right. So I just want to clear the screen now. It's not a lot of writing that I put on there. And let's talk about what could lead to these family types being formed, right? All right, so let me clear it. Okay, so what is it that leads to, what are the causes of a blended family? Hey, look at this, how thick this pencil point is. That is not what I intended though. All right, so causes. All right, I think you'll have some things in the chat. Let's see. Right, the death of a parent or separation or divorce or migration, right? And it's basically the same for both, right? Okay, so blended family could be caused by divorce or separation or breakup, right? Remarriage. It could also be caused by death of a spouse, right? Then over here, causes for sibling household. So here again, it could be shared inheritance. Right? It could also be that the parents have died. But parents don't only disappear because they die. Another reason in the Caribbean context could be migration. Right? Migration of parents. Sometimes parents might feel they could make more money if they try to migrate to the US or get a better life for their children in the long run if they migrate to the US or to the UK or to the Europe. Well, not Europe so much for Trinidad, but probably the US or the UK, right? So they might migrate and then the siblings are left to take care of themselves. And the parents are presumably creating a space, getting a job, getting a place for the children to come to, right? So migration is another reason in the Caribbean context where you might have a sibling household. And then another one that isn't as positive, if any of them could be considered positive, is abandonment. Right? So the parents are unfit or the parents leave the children to the care of, well, their other children. Right? So check and see if there's anything unclear here. Let me see in the chat if we have any other answers. Well, I'm seeing disownment. If a parent disowns both of their children, it is probably it is probably abandonment. You can't really disown a child. That I think that is abandonment. If the siblings run away, okay, well, I guess two siblings could run away together or three siblings. All the siblings could run away and decide, okay, we're going to rent an apartment if it was like an abusive situation. All right, we will take a break in a few minutes. Let me just see What is next? Actually, maybe we should take a break now. Let's take a break now for 5 minutes. And I will leave the screen up for anybody who is writing. Right, so let me pause the recording. We will take a break for 5 minutes. And then we will continue with the next family type. Right, so 5 minutes. So we will start back at about 12:33 or so. Right, so one other reason that could result in a blended family, one of the factor, one of the cause could also be abandonment. All right, so if a spouse abandons or a partner abandons, well, a spouse or partner and their children, and then the abandoned party goes on to remarry or gets into another relationship with and have additional children and so on, then that is also a blended family, right? Okay, so we're going to the next slide. Okay, single parent family. So this is the type on the left, and then we are back to a term on the right hand side. All right, so related term. Right, status, which is one's position in society. Is one a father? Is one a mother? Is one a dependent? Is one independent? What a minor or adult, whatever. Right, so here's our type: single parent family. A family with one parent and caregiver. So one parent, I mean parent or caregiver. So maybe the child, maybe the adult is not the parent biologically, but the person is the person giving the care, right? And one or more dependent children. There is no other spouse, no other adult partner who shares the parenting responsibility. So it's just the mother or just the father, right? Or the person fulfilling that role. Any questions about that? So we can talk about causes of this family type. Oops, sorry. Sorry. All right, here we go. Okay, so causes, right? What could be the causes of a single parent family? Well, one could be death of a spouse. What could be the other causes? Another could be abandonment. By a spouse or partner. And there is the possibility of choice, right? Someone could choose to have a child on their own, although society seems to be scandalized by that when people do it, but it is possible, right? That a single parent family could be the result of a mother or a father making a choice. Oh, right, divorce. Yes, I did not put in divorce. Thank you. Right, divorce is another one. Divorce or separation or breakup. All right, so the fourth one will fit up here. I'm going to put it up here, right? So divorce, separation, well, breakup is like separation, so I'll just leave it as separation. Yeah, okay, so I think maybe if imprisonment is an issue, we might call it separation. All right, so Aaron is asking a good question. What type of family is it with parents and children, but the parents are not married? Well, it's still the types of families that we have discussed. Marriage doesn't necessarily have to do with the family type. Marriage has to do with the relationship between, so the type of union. Are they married or are they in a union? So people are saying common law, but as it has to do with the relationship. No, it's not joint sibling family necessarily, right? So whether parents are married or not does not affect whether it's a single parent home, whether it's well, sorry, it's not the only factor that affects whether it's a single parent home or an extended family or a sibling household or a adult joint household or a what are the other nuclear family and so on, right? That status is between the mother and the father. That's a description for the type of union between the mother and the father. Yes, if it's just a wife and a husband and no children, then it's nuclear. Right? Now I'm saying this thing about the marriage and the family structure, but we will look at it with slides and notes next week, right? That is the type of union between the adults. Oops, I think I just erased something that I didn't mean to there. All right. Okay, any other questions? These questions and comments are good. They're helping us clarify things. Parents, one parent, one grandparent, and a child. I think that would count as extended. If the grandparent is helping take care of the child as an extended family. Now, I hope CXC wouldn't be stupid enough to ask that question, because obviously we could use two phrases, two terms to describe that family, right? Which is why you are asking, because it's confusing. So it could be extended because it's the grandparent, and it could be single parent because it's one parent, right? So I would hope CXC wouldn't answer that because it's ambiguous. Extended doesn't quite capture it, and single parent doesn't quite capture it. All right, now a common law relationship, not a common law family. A common law relationship is when the two partners are not married. Right? So we have to separate in our minds the relationships between the adults and the family type. They are not one and the same. So we are not doing relationships, we are not doing unions today. We are just doing family types, which is what we call, how we call the different groupings of all the different possible configurations of parents and children and other relatives, right? Whether or not the relationship is common law or is a visiting union or something else has to do with the relationship between the two adults. So, and that we will do next week, right? So I'm hoping this is taking care of the questions in the chat, because a few people are asking about it, right? What we have done today is family types, and that involves the children and the adults, right? All right. Okay, yes, so this one other question about the syllabus. So the syllabus does not change regularly, which means yes, the questions themselves are similar. Okay. All right, so I want to move on from this. If anybody has anything they're still confused about in relation to the family type or the children, then you could message. All right. Yes, this scrap iron man did just pass in my neighborhood. All right, so I'm gonna clear the screen and we're gonna move on, right? Someone is asking about if an aunt and an uncle is taking care of children, what type of family would that be, right? Then classify the aunt and the uncle as parents, because I'm assuming biological parents are not present and grandparents are not present. So think of the aunt and the uncle as parents, and then classify accordingly. So is it if a grandparent is present, it's extended. If If it's one aunt or one uncle, it might be single parents. There's another one I hope CISA could stay away from because it's not 100% clear based on the definitions they have us using, right? All right, so let's move on. Yeah, if it's just the aunt and uncle and the children and the aunt and uncle are like the parents, then it's nuclear. All right, guys. Major functions of the family is our next topic. And if there are still questions about what we did previously that I did not answer, then the last 10 minutes of class, bring it back to my attention, please, right? As time will go on, we will not be able to finish this, and this is important for us to finish today, right? All right, major functions of the family. So guys, tell me, before we go to the slides, what are families supposed to do? Money, okay, take care of children, socialize children, provide support, provide basic needs, support each other. Great, provide shelter, right? So we could organize their functions under a few different headings, right? The first one seems like an obvious one. Everybody skipped over it. The first need that you have for a family, the reason you need a family is because you need children, and families are where children, well, not in the strictest sense of the biological textbook, but the biology textbook, but families are where children come from. Okay. And that might seem like a given, but think about it. You have seen movies where children don't come from families. For example, think of one of the older Superman movies, not the most recent one, but like one of the older ones where we see the destruction of Krypton, remember? At the beginning, I think Russell Crowe is in that. And babies, in their society, people no longer give birth to babies. They're actually produced kind of like cloned, right? So it is possible in our imaginations anyway, for a society to produce children without families. But in the world that we live in, families are the unit that produce children, right? Families are responsible for procreation. And you all might be thinking, but you know, some people have children and they don't plan, they don't have a family, they have children out of wedlock, they have children accidentally. The thing is though, once that child is born, the child is in a family unit. Perhaps grandparents might step in and help. Perhaps the parent who hadn't been planning will become a mother or a father, and then they will begin to plan and they will be the family of the child. Perhaps the child might go into foster care, and within foster care, people will fulfill the role or the roles of other family members, like mothers, fathers, feed them, and so on, right? In our society, babies need a family to survive. Think about leatherback turtles. Turtles lay eggs on the beach, and then they leave the eggs. And then much later on, the eggs will hatch and the turtles will make their way to the ocean, right? When they make their way to the ocean, it's not a family that's bringing them up. It's them bringing up themselves, right? So that is supposed to help us see that for children, human children to survive, they need a family, right? Okay, so families are responsible for procreation, reproducing. These are all different ways to say procreation. Procreation is an unusual word. So these are ways that we are more familiar with of conveying the idea. So reproduction, producing offspring, having children. All of this is what a family does, right? And on the right, we have a little bit more explanation. So you could shorten it if you like. But we need the general ideas here, right? We need to be able to explain it. So one purpose of the family is to produce children. Whether that family has a mother and a father, or just a mother, or just a father, or grandparents, or mother, father, grandparents, aunt, uncle, right? Families are different. We just looked at all the different types of families, right? The child is born into a family, it has to take care of it. Now, it's not just about being born. It's not just that we need a sperm and an egg to create a baby, right? It's also that you need somebody to feed the baby, care for the baby, help the baby learn to talk, learn to walk, love the baby, love the child, take the child to school, make sure the child learns what society expects of it, help the child with school, help the child find a job, right? All of that is involved in producing children. So it's not just having a child be born, but it's also getting a child from birth to maybe 18 years or 21 years or maybe even longer, right? So having a child turn into an adult who can take care of himself or herself or themselves, right? So a child who's born without a family to take care of it or them, they may not be able to have their needs met. And so that means they might not survive. That's one thing. But it also means that if they survive, they might not thrive. And our society is full of children who are existing, and people too, they're just existing on the bare minimum and they're not thriving. They don't have the things that they need to make them happy, to make them feel secure and safe. I'm sure that we all know someone, right? So it's not just that the family is there to have the child be born, but the family is there to also help supply the child with, whatever they need to become a functional adult, right? And society in turn needs children. It needs the family to produce children. If families don't produce children, society has no other way of getting children right now. We do not live in a futuristic society where we can clone humans. And if we do not have children, then we do not have adults, and then economies will stagnate. Culture will not be perpetuated. Life as we know it, will stop, right? If we cannot support additional lives. All right, so I hope this point is clear. If it's not clear, feel free to ask a question in the chat. Or if you want to add to it, you can put the comments in the chat. So I'm just giving us a minute or two to finish our notes from this slide, right? All right, can we move on? Now, I'm not suggesting that anybody has to, because I'm seeing some questions in the chat, right? No one is mandated to produce children. It is everybody's choice. All right, so I have mostly yeses, but I have one person still writing. So if you could take a screenshot, please do that, right? And some people might say, society has too many people, the world has too many people, we need to population control. So maybe we should not have as many children. Those are all personal decisions. All right, so I need to change the slide, right? So please take a screenshot if you're not done, or come back to it on the recording. All right, next one, rearing children. So rearing is the word that CSEC uses. It's a very unusual word. We don't really think of us as of raising children as rearing children. We think of it as raising children, but I put it here so we could be familiar with it, right? So the family is a unit that cooperates. So together, they have to work together to raise children and socialize individuals, right? So again, remember having a child means you're responsible for them from before they're born, because you have to make sure you have a safe pregnancy and a safe environment for them, right? And all the way up to maybe when they become an adult, whatever age that is. It may vary from child to child, but let me say roughly 18, 19, 20, right? So what does this mean? So CSEC says, okay, what are the responsibilities of the family? Explain for 5 marks. And so we say, all right, one of the responsibilities is rearing children. What does that mean? It means that the family unit has to provide parents or caregivers who care for the child, right? So somebody in that group of people that call themselves a family, or that share the household, or a few people, they must be parents or they must be caregivers. How do they care for the child? Well, they care for the child physically. So when we say physically, what do we mean there? What are we talking about with physical care? We're talking about food. That's probably the most obvious one. We're talking about shelter. They must have somewhere safe to live, to sleep. We might mean clothes. So think about your physical body and what it needs, right? So we might mean clothing. We might mean a place, we might mean that, family responsible for keeping people clean, keeping children clean. So keeping them clean and groomed. I'm trying to take it beyond the basic food, shelter, clothing that we always do. Think about all the physical needs of the body. Perhaps it might mean keeping them healthy. Right? So that might mean medicine. It might mean healthy conditions, healthy living conditions. Right? It might mean, and this could be a hot topic for some people, but I'm going to put it, vaccinations. Right? Taking the babies to clinic to make sure they get the vaccines that they get for checkups, to make sure that they're growing like they should. Right? All of these are elements of physical care for a child. Right? So let's make sure we add these in. And then we will go to emotional in a minute, right? All right, so we have a couple of good comments in the chat. The opportunity for recreation, one person is saying, so that's like the opportunity to exercise, to run around. Small children need to run around, right? Probably bigger children too, but the small ones, if you keep them too restrained, they will rebel. The bigger ones, might just sleep. But we're thinking about in these details, we're thinking about what do they need to keep their body healthy, right? And some of you are also saying things like schooling and school supplies. I'm going to save that and put it under intellectual development. Even toys, I'm going to put under intellectual development. All right, can we move on? I want to do emotional development next, right? So I'm going to change the ink so that I don't have to erase what is there just yet in case anyone is still writing, right? And I'm going to go up here. So when we say emotional well-being, what are we talking about? What does it mean to protect somebody or take care of somebody's emotional development? Yes, love. Human beings need love and affection. That is a need, right? We are not happy without it. Oops, sorry. Right, so we need love and affection. People need to feel like they are important, like they matter. Children need to feel like they're important, like they matter. They need to have feelings of safety, right? They must feel like where they are safe, that they are not under threat, like they matter. So love, but I mean, that could be included under love and affection too, right? But that they are worthwhile. Trini parents like to quarrel and say, when parents are quarreling, at least long ago, right? I hope that is not so common anymore, but they would call people, they would say so and so worthless, right? We know this word worthless, or well, we like to say worthless. That's how we pronounce it, which is really worthless is what it means, right? But so we don't want to tell children that, because they may not understand that whomever is saying it is just angry right now and lost their temper, right? People need to feel like they are worthwhile. I'm just pointing out that in our culture, sometimes we forget that. Right. So y'all are pointing out why we need these things, which is very important. So to feel happy, to feel, yeah, to feel respected is another one you could put there. To be able to express themselves, to develop healthy and stable personalities. Oh, we did so well, and now we have a troll. Oh, we may have had one undercover this whole time, you know, I'm not sure. All right. Okay, good. So let's make these notes and let's see, we'll move on to the next one in a second, right? All right, no, our class is supposed to go until 1:30. We will get to 1:20. We'll go to 1:20 and then we'll stop, right? Okay, so no, you're just writing out. All right, so let's discuss the next one. So I'm here, what? I'm not gonna look at the chat for a little while. So let's just see how much we can get through in 10 minutes, right? And you may have to screenshot because I'm just gonna try and pick up the pace a little bit, right? The concepts are not hard, but for homework, I might ask you to just come back to it and make your notes that for homework, right? All right, so when parents or caregivers also need to think about the social development of children. So this means making sure that they can, and I've changed the slide again, yeah. Making sure that they can interact with others, right? That is what is important. So, and this is, you know, a lot of things, like they have to be able to handle conflict. So if someone upsets them, they cannot punch the person in the face, they cannot cuss the person. That is not good social behavior. When somebody tells them no, they must not scream and shout and hit, right? Those behavior we might see in toddlers as they are learning how to deal with problems, right? All right, then intellectual, so can interact with others. So we're thinking of things like speaking politely, no biting of other people's children, right? What else? No violence. Guys, I can't unmute people who raise their hands, so you need to put something in the chat, but I'll look at it in a minute, right? All right, then intellectually, we're thinking about what does the person need to stimulate their brain. So let me change the color again to try and separate these notes, right? So it could be toys. People had said toys above, but children need toys to develop. right? Books, but toys don't have to be expensive. If you all have small babies in your house, you might know they like to play with cardboard boxes and empty bottles. Um, those things are not so dangerous. Plastic bags may be a little more dangerous, but they will play with anything really. Toys, books, once it's safe, right? And we allow it. So toys, books, school supplies. It may even be things like conversation, right? People develop intellectually through conversation, children especially. Right, so let's note what we can. And in 1 minute, I need to change the slide. So you plan to take a screenshot if you're not going to finish your notes in 1 minute, right? Yep, learning experiences, making sure they go to schools. So some people are putting some things here that are highlighting my aged nature and the fact that I'm old. Some of you all are saying electronics and media. I'm not sure that I personally see that. Well, I'm not sure I see electronics as something we might put under intellectual development, unless it's a case of the child in secondary school and then they're doing IT or something along those lines, and then they need a laptop or they need a tablet. But I'm not suggesting that a toddler or a baby needs to have a screen in front of them, right? And media could be educational videos. It could be Cocomelon on YouTube, but it could also be books, right? Libraries or museums, those are wonderful ideas. Yeah, older children should have access to those. Online learning games. Yeah. We just need to be careful that, because we're not sure how much technology children need and how much technology we need them to have so they don't bother us, so we could do something else, right? Yeah. Okay, so teaching them basic skills like dressing could go under, I think that could go anywhere. It could go under physical, it could go under social, because they need to know how to dress themselves properly to be acceptable in society, how to comb their hair, how to brush their teeth. Could be physical, because dental care, but it could also be social, because you don't want them to have bad breath around other people, right? All right, all of those are really good ideas and examples. Okay, so I want to move to the next slide. So I'm counting to 10. So if you need to screenshot it, go ahead. Otherwise, I'm going to clear the writing and go to the next slide, right? Morals, values, manners, yes, those are very important for social interaction, right? So that's like the examples we have here. That would be the general way of saying it. Morals, values, manners, right? Okay, so I'm clearing the writing and we're going to the next slide, right? Okay, so an economic units. The family is there to make sure that what everybody needs that has to be bought, those needs are met for everyone. So it's not that everyone needs to to have a job per se. It's not that everyone needs to make a financial contribution per se. But if the family needs things that cost money, then everybody in the family must find a way to pitch in to help make that happen, provided that they can. If the child if it's a child and they are a toddler, then they probably can't. But if it's a child and they're like 12, they might be able to help with the housework, or 8, they might be able to help with the housework, right? Or if they're 16, they might be able to help with childcare or elder care, right? All right, so either the family, so I'm looking on the left-hand side now, either the family provides the labor or the money for the needs of everybody, the others included, to be met, right? And what are some of these basic needs that cost money? Well, in one of the top of the list is food, right? Nutritious food. And so you could provide food for the family by having a job or by cooking the food that someone else buys, or by growing food in a garden that the family could use. So there are lots of ways people can contribute to food costs, right? Clothing is another one. And the most obvious way is if somebody has a salary and they buy clothes. But I'm sure many of you all have grandparents who like to sew, right? So sewing clothes, you know, that's another, or patching clothes if a button comes off. Right? Or repairing a sleeve or something, you know, right? So everybody can contribute to that. And it's an economic need being met, right? Okay, so shelter is making sure everybody has a roof over their head. So maybe that means contributing to rent, or maybe that means helping repair something in the house, a leak or something. Education, so that could mean helping buy books, that could mean carrying somebody to school, picking them up, helping them with homework, all of those things, right? Childcare, so small children who cannot be left alone. Domestic work, so keeping the home clean. Right, keeping the surroundings neat and tidy so people don't get sick. Or, you know, having a neater environment might help you accomplish more. Medical care, so either paying for medication that people might need, or carrying them to the hospital or to the pharmacy to get the medication they might need. Elder care, so taking care of elderly relatives who cannot be left alone. Perhaps they are sick, they may have Alzheimer's or dementia, and somebody needs to be with them all the time. Or they could be bedridden, they cannot get out of bed and do things for themselves. All right, so these are, again, basic needs, right? So things that one would pay money to get, the family could either work for the money to provide everything everybody needs, or contribute to the labor to provide everything that everybody needs, right? And I left number 9 open, other, in case you all had any other ideas that you all wanted to suggest. Anything else we need to pay for that we didn't account for? Okay, so a couple of people have mentioned religion. Religion might go in the slide before, where we talked, so I'm going to go back for a second, where we talked about emotional, social. Well, somebody had mentioned moral values under social needs, right? And religion is kind of like teaching people morals and values, right? All right, security will come up in a little while. So rent might go under shelter. So shelter could be rent, or it could be the cost of the house, or it could be the cost of repairing where you live, or something along those lines. All right, so I want to change the slide in 10 seconds. So I'm counting to 10. All right, so let's keep going. We're going to the next slide. All right, so the family is also a social unit, right? So under here, we have the point about security. So the family has to think about, we said, and this goes back to what we said 2 slides ago, what do people need emotionally and psychologically? If the family doesn't provide it, then people might turn to other more harmful ways to try and get a feeling of belonging or a feeling of value, right? People might turn to drugs or to alcohol or to people they shouldn't be spending time with, right? If they cannot get what they need from the family itself. So what does the family provide exactly? Well, it provides a feeling of love and belonging, like we would have talked about when we were doing 2 slides ago, right? It helps us to feel safe and secure. So the family is supposed to make you feel personally like you're safe. So maybe like with a lock on the door, or protection when you're walking on the street with a family member, you know, nobody's going to harass you because your bigger brother or your bigger sister will tell them something and then they will cry, right? Financial security. So, and children, you know, worry about when families are not financially secure. Children know everything and they worry about everything. So financial security, we feeling that they know where their meals will come from, where the money for their books will come from. The families need to help us feel, well, provide for our health to keep us healthy, right? If we are healthy, we feel safe and secure. If we are not feeling well, like let's say somebody has a cavity and they don't feel like they worry about what is going to happen. Is the tooth going to crack in half? Is it going to fall out? Will it hurt tonight? Will it hurt tomorrow? So it could erode your sense of security, right? Families should help take care of that problem by taking one to the dentist or taking one to a doctor or to a clinic if there's another issue, right? Families need to provide a safety net. So let's say a young person has a job, right? Then that person, if that job, if they lose that job, if something bad happens and they lose the job, for instance, then families could be the thing that helps them get back on their feet, right? Okay, when I say met, I mean fulfilled. Or is it net that we're asking about? Sorry. I think this is the last thing we have to go through and then we can wrap up, right? Safety net, like as in a net that will catch you. Picture like a trampoline, but like a net is not going to send you back up in the air. A safety net under a tightrope that acrobats will have, and they have a safety net below. So if you fall off the tightrope, you fall onto the safety net. That's where it comes from, right? Okay, what is MET? MET as in over here on the left, to make sure the individual's emotional and psychological needs are met. I mean, like fulfilled, right? So the needs need to be fulfilled. If they are not fulfilled, then people turn to harmful things, right? And then back to the column on the right, we also need to have healthy self-esteem. So we need to feel like people value us and accept us. It's not a good feeling if we feel like we're not wanted or we don't have anything valuable to contribute. We get anxious, we get nervous, we get sad. We could suffer from depression if our emotional needs are not met, our social needs are not met, right? Human beings are social creatures. Okay, so this is our last concept for the class today, right? I did have some questions, so we could talk about homework quickly, and then everybody who is caught up could go ahead, right? So let me move to the homework slide in 10 seconds. So you can take a snapshot, and then I will come back afterwards after I show you what the homework is, right? All right, so this was going to be, if we had time, we would have done these questions, right? So, oops, and there's a pineapple. Let me put the questions in the chat, and I will ask you to, for homework, try them in the chat, in your notebook, right? So let me go back to the last slide here. Right, so I'm putting these in the chat. I don't know if you're hearing music in the background. The neighbor, I think, has decided that his workday is over, so it's time for music, right? But we're almost done, so hopefully it's not too distracting. All right, so homework. Oops. Oh no. All right, sorry, I have to go back to get back to homework. This is Zoom sending me a sign that it doesn't want homework. Y'all don't want homework. All right. Okay, let's try this again. I should go join them after class. You're so funny, no. All right, so we have 3 questions to try for homework, right? What are 3 functions of a family? What are 2 ways in which a family can help a child economically? So the second question is asking about a child. And then explain 2 ways in which a family can help an individual socially. Right? All right, so you will try these for homework. I'm not asking you to turn it in this week, but we will correct it together next week. And then the next exercise you do, you will turn it, right? All right, so if at this point there are no questions, then you could go ahead. Remember that the recording will be available on www.iLoveLessons.com under summer recordings, right? It's in the chat. You could just scroll up and you'll see it. I'm stopping the recording here if you need it. Yes, I can go back to any slide